Hello and welcome back to another chapter of It Hurts to Hope by Inquilatory on AO3. Chapter 19, Interlude. Chapter 1, Cleo's Point of View. Cleo is sparring with Etho again. It was Etho who invited her over this time, which is interesting. In Cleo's experience, she's usually the one who asks for a session, either because of residue energy or the waking nightmares that sometimes haunt her steps. It's been a long time, and Cleo's mostly made peace with her past, but sometimes it comes back in the strangest of moments. And in those moments, she really needs to whack something with her axe. But this time, Etho messages her and asks to meet up. And who is Cleo to say no? Especially when she arrives and Etho is shifting from foot to foot, looking much more agitated than usual. Which is to say, not at all. Cleo can count on one hand the number of times she's seen Etho shaken up, and it looks like she gets to add to the tally today. "Did you feel a shift in the Matrix?" she jokes as she lands next to him, but Etho simply winces and doesn't reply. Cleo's gotten pretty good at reading Etho's half-hidden expressions over the years, and this one, with the tightness in his eyes and the sharp slant to his eyebrows, and the way he lets his hair fall over his face, is one she doesn't see very often. It's uncertainty. "Something's going to happen, and it's putting me on edge," Etho replies, and Cleo doesn't pretend to know what that means, but they both know she doesn't need to. She just needs to listen. "I don't know what, but there's something bigger at play here, and I don't like it." "So you need a distraction," Cleo sums up, already pulling her axe and shield out, and unbuckling her elytra. Etho nods, reaching for his own weapons. They don't bother to count down. They've done this enough times that they move in sync, diving for each other with their weapons ready and guards up. The sound of metal against metal rings in Cleo's ears, and she grins as she feels the familiar rush of adrenaline pumping through her blood. "You're going down, cryptid man," she teases, and Etho chuckles, easily parrying her axe and leaping aside. "I'll just have to get you first," he shoots back, and Cleo blows a strand of fiery red hair out of her eyes and fakes a lunge to the right. "I already died once," she spits out, swinging around on Etho's other side and quite nearly chopping his arm off. Etho blocks at the last second. 0 out of 10 experience. Wouldn't recommend." Etho, despite currently being overpowered by Cleo's brute force and unyielding axe, gives such a genuine laugh that Cleo can't help laughing as well. Then she swipes Etho's sword out of his hands and knocks him to the ground, pressing the shaft of her axe over his throat before he can get up again. "Yield!" Etho gasps, and Cleo pulls back her weapon and helps him stand. A fairly short duel, especially for the two of them, and she can tell that neither of them are really tired. "Go again?" Cleo asks, right as their communicators ring in unison, and they freeze where they stand. Communicators can be programmed by the user to give out certain ringtones or signals, and can even be muted completely. The only sound that never changes is the admin's direct messages, the ones that override all mutes and personalization to contact the whole server without exception. It's something of a red code. Cleo's only heard it once or twice, because Exuma uses it as sparingly as possible. And now they've both heard it. Cleo meets Etho's eyes for one brief stunned second. Then they both scramble for their comms. Something is very, very wrong. Come signal override. At everyone. Zoom forward. I'm calling code red. Everyone get geared up. Impulse SV. X, what's going on? Zoom void. There's a watcher on the server. Etho lets out a sound like he's being strangled. His communicator drops from his shaking hands, and he doesn't bother to pick it up. Etho? Cleo asks. But he doesn't reply. Eyes wide, too wide, much too wide. Etho! Cleo grabs at her friend's hands and clutches them tightly. She forces Etho to meet her gaze. Breathe, Etho, she commands, and takes in exaggerated breaths. Breathe, or I'll do it for you. I don't need to breathe, Etho says in a strange voice, ignoring Cleo's threats. I don't need to breathe, because I'm not Cleo, and I'm out there, and this is why out there is off balance. I felt it, and now it's here. I know what they do to surfers. I know what they do to surfers, Cleo, and it is bad. Cleo admittedly doesn't know a lot about Watchers. They weren't exactly a popular topic of conversation on her homeworld. But Etho's terror is real, and if Etho is scared, then these Watchers must be truly powerful. Not knowing what to do about Etho, Cleo turns back to her comm. The other hermits are forming ranks, splitting up into groups to try and find the Watcher. Impulse has already confirmed that it isn't at spawn, and Exuma explained that hacking into the server means that the Watcher most likely didn't spawn where they expected it to. Exuma void. It could be anywhere. We need to find it immediately. Zombie Cleo. Etho and me are at sparring. We'll start looking over here. Exuma void. If you see it, do not attack. I'm not losing anyone today, or at all. Let me know, and I'll /TP over there. Zombie Cleo. You got it, boss. Cleo looks up from her communicator and is relieved to see that Etho appears to have calmed down a little bit. He's picked his comm back up, and he scans the newest messages, then looks back up to meet Cleo's gaze. Up for some Watcher hunting? Cleo asks with a jagged grin, and although Etho doesn't return it, he nods. A moment of understanding passes between them, and then they're gearing up and pulling rockets out to take flight. Cleo might have left her past far behind, but she can never quite let it go. Today, she's grateful she didn't. It's time to hunt a Watcher. Chapter 2. Tango's POV. Tango was worried. He's pretty sure that everyone's worried. Honestly, it's been a tense few hours since the Watcher hacked into the server, and it's obvious that none of them are going to relax until they find out why he's here. Which is going to take a while, considering the Watcher in question is still out cold from whatever sedative Mumbo gave him. Tango peeks through the window of the iron door again, but he's met with the same view as always. The barren little room, and the lump of torn fabric and matted feathers on the bed. Mumbo said the potion should wear off soon, Impulse says behind him, and Tango turns away from the door to meet his friend's gaze. He's sitting in one of the chairs by the small rickety table and has his feet kicked up on the tabletop. He looks up from his book when he feels Tango's eyes on him. So, you can sit down and stop pacing, he explains with a raised eyebrow, and Tango winces apologetically and falls into the other chair, flame-tipped tail flicking in agitation behind him. I'm on edge is all, Tango tries to explain, throwing his hands into the air. I don't like that he's here. I don't know how much you know about these things, these guys, Impy, but let me tell you, they're nasty. There's a reason the Netherborn don't classify them to any of the three dimensions. Tango's people, though living in the depths of the most hellish of the worlds, are not stupid. The Netherborn have been at peace with the Endfolk and the overworld races for hundreds of years, and Tango doesn't doubt that it will last for hundreds more. The overworld may be vast and have no true leader, but they would never encroach on Netherborn territory, and the Netherborn would never dream of interfering with the Endfolk and their queen. But the Watchers? The Watchers don't belong to any dimension, and that's why Tango's never known what to think about them. The Watchers are something different, something more. And not having any ties to a dimension or world is a powerful thing. It means the Watchers have no land to lose, and no home to defend. It means that if it came to war, they would be able to attack all three of the dimensions and experience no repercussions. Tangle will never admit it, but he fears the Watchers. He fears what will happen if they decide they want more. And he doesn't know what to think about the one that's already here. Maybe we should make him something to eat, Tango thinks aloud, and Impulse looks back up from his book. You know, when he wakes up, he might be all hungry and stuff. I don't see why not, Impulse says with a shrug. So Tango stands up and starts sticking through the double chests they set up with supplies and food for whoever's on guard. Since they don't know how long the Watcher will be here, it's well stocked and full of useful doodads. Do Watchers eat soup? Tango asks the air, and Impulse shoots him a look that very plainly says he has no idea if Watchers eat soup. I mean, I think everyone likes soup. What's not to like about soup? Alright, soup it is. Let the soupification commence. He knows he's rambling, but there's not much he can do about it. If he doesn't ramble aloud, he starts rambling in his head, and that's exponentially worse. See, there he goes again. Tango sticks his tongue between his teeth and focuses on soup. Admittedly, he might have tipped a little too much of his spice mix into it, but maybe Watchers like seasoned foods. Tango knows that the Never spices aren't everyone's cup of tea, but he's hoping that the strange eldritch being will like them. Alright, I think I'm just gonna leave it on the floor. Tango muses quietly to himself, staring down at the steaming bowl of soup in his hands. And when he wakes up, which will hopefully be soon, he'll eat it. Don't overthink it, Impulse teases, and Tango flicks his tail at him with an amused snort, before taking a deep breath and grabbing the key, unlocking the door. The door swings open and Tango steps into the room, fully intending to leave the bowl on the floor, and then get out and away from the unconscious Watcher. Oh, the Watcher's not unconscious. Tango freezes and blinks a couple times, feeling uncomfortably pinned by the Watcher's pitch-black eyes. He's crammed into the furthest corner of the bed, wings squashed behind him and cuffed hands held up to his chest. His gaze is fixed unerringly on Tango. The Watcher stares at Tango. Tango stares back. The soup cheerfully steams in Tango's hands. Without taking his eyes off the Watcher, he wants to look away. He can't look away. Tango bends down and places the soup on the rug. The Watcher doesn't move an inch. Is he even breathing? Tango takes a step back, then another, one more, and he's out of the room. The door swings shut, and Tango is finally away from the piercing, dead-eyed stare of being trapped behind it. Impulse is already opening his mouth to ask what's the matter, so Tango swallows and forces words through his drier than usual throat. Colex, he says, and doesn't bother to disguise the nervousness in his voice. The Watcher's awake. Chapter 4. Doc's POV. Doc was just passing by. It might seem like a lie, but he really was just wandering through the forest nearby Exuma's base, enjoying the night air and the almost hard-to-believe silence that surrounded him, so different from the usual hustle and bustle of the Hermitcraft server. Doc loves all the hermits, but they're a noisy bunch, and sometimes it's nice to get away from it all. Okay, fine, and maybe his elytra is too low on durability for him to trust it. Listen, he was in a rush, he had an appointment with Efo and Beef, and he raced out of his base without checking his gear. Sue him! Anyways, it's nice to take a stroll through the forest. This late into the season, all the hermits have elytras and never portals. It's not many that take the time anymore to just walk. So that's what he's doing. And then he notices that he somehow made it over to Exuma's base. The lights are still on in the office window. Doc frowns and pulls out his comm. It's past midnight, and he knows that his admin had been spreading himself thin over the past few days, ever since the Watcher hacked onto the server. Doc has several thoughts about the Watcher, but his first priority is to make sure Exuma is alright. Maybe he forgot to turn the light off? Doc reasons with himself as he types a message, hitting send and pausing under a large oak to await a reply. He knows he's lying to himself. Exuma doesn't forget things. Bzz. Exuma void. I was just going to sleep. Liar, Doc types, and can't help the fond smile that quirks at his mouth. He knows that he's really the least suited person to tell the admin to go to sleep, but Exuma's health is more important than his own. If the admin isn't doing well, the server isn't doing well. Doc knows that Exuma's number one priority is to protect the hermits, but he's not sure if Exuma knows that the hermit's priority is to protect him. Doc M77. When was the last time you slept? Exuma Void. Last night? Bullshit. Doc stares at the comm, refusing to touch the keys until Exuma gives him the truth. It's impossible to count the amount of times they've done this, and Exuma knows that Doc's stubborn patience is deeper than the Never Lakes. Doc can wait all night if he has to. Exuma Void. It's been a while. They traded messages for a while longer, Exuma seeming to get more and more irritated with Doc's refusal to drop the subject. Doc glares up at the window, imagining the Voidwalker hunched over at his desk, furiously typing out replies. Exuma Void. Fine, I'll go to sleep. Keep your fur down. Good night, Doc. Doc raises a skeptical eyebrow, even though Exuma can't see it, and glances back up at the window again. He crosses his arms and taps a foot impatiently on the grass. A second goes by. 5, 10, 20, 1 minute, then 2. The light stays on. Doc lifts up his communicator. I'm not leaving until that light goes out, he informs Exuma, and he can almost hear the frustrated groan on the other end of the comm. Exuma tries for a moment longer to get Doc off his back, but there's no stopping a goat on a mission. Doc isn't lying when he says he could stay out all night. He's got wood, stone, torches, food, and anything else needed to set up a temporary campsite. You have to be bluffing, Exuma says, and Doc laughs out loud to the silent woods. Bluffing? Him? Exuma knows him better than that, and they both know it. Finally, Exuma relents. Doc, though he'd never admit it, is relieved. He's not actually sure what he'd do if Exuma refused to agree. Doc M77. Lights out, Lights out, X. Sleep well. Exuma doesn't reply, but the light in his window flicks off, and Doc lets out a sigh as he stows his column away. He waits for a few minutes to see if Exuma is baiting him, but the light stays off, and the window stays dark. He knows he wouldn't do that anyways. Exuma is a man of his word if nothing else, and he's struck a deal with Doc. Neither of them will break it. Doc sighs again and pulls out a rocket, leaping into the air and setting it off to boost him beyond the trees. In a mere moment, he's high above the forest and he angles his wings towards his base. Mere minutes later, the sound of breaking straps rips him out of his thoughts, and he suddenly remembers why he was walking through the woods near Exuma's base. Doc spits a couple unsavory words in German, and his elytra breaks completely, sending him plummeting to the ground below. He misses the water bucket clutch, and he only witnesses Scar, also awake, and most likely working on one of his elaborate builds. Doc threatens him into silence while he's racing back to grab his stuff, and Scar reassures him that he'd never tell. After all, he's been in the same position many times over. Exuma doesn't say anything in chat, and Doc figures that means he's already asleep. At least one thing went to plan today. Chapter 5. Impulse's POV. Impulse thought things were getting better. True, it's a little hard to classify what getting better is supposed to mean, but he really thought so. It's been only 4 days since they've taken the Watcher into custody, but Impulse has been on guard duty a lot, and he's starting to think that the Watcher isn't as bad as they thought. Starting with the concerning amount of food he's consumed in those past 4 days. Impulse doesn't know Watchers, but he's pretty sure that they're not usually that thin and malnourished. Which means this Watcher had been starving for a while, and his gaunt appearance and sallow skin isn't natural for his kind. Admittedly, Impulse wasn't feeling very generous to Zelqua when he first showed up. He'd bitten him, for Nether's sake. That alone should have proved that he was something dangerous. But every interaction with the strange little being after that was kind of nice. If he had to be honest, Zelqua apologized for biting him and thanked him for the food. When he looked like he was falling asleep against the wall in what couldn't possibly be a comfortable position, Impulse went in to gently prod him onto the bed, and he listened. That one might have been because he'd been too out of it to do anything else. Impulse still counts it as a victory. And then, just this morning, he successfully gave him a bundle of old clothes that B-Dubs dropped off, tailored by Cleo to make them suitable for wings. I never really wore them anyways. I hope he doesn't mind that they're a little ratty, B-Dubs explained with a shrug when Impulse took them, and was soon gone with a quick goodbye and a yelp as he tripped on the stairs. Impulse only laughed a little bit. B-Dubs had called the clothes ratty, but the pure wonder on Zelqua's face when he got them made Impulse suspect that the Watcher could really care less. They were nothing but old cloth and forgotten garments, yet Zelqua held them like they were woven from the same silken thread as his tattered robes. So, yeah, overall, Impulse was under the impression that things were going well. Zelko was getting used to them, Mumbo and Scar had come in to visit a few times, and he seemed to be becoming a little more open. He should have known it would all come crashing down. Impulse is the only one on guard duty when Mumbo comes back with more cookies, and he lets him into the room with the low price of one baked good. He munches on it while he returns to his book, listening to the low murmurs of Mumbo and Zelqua conversing. He's glad that Zelqua seems friendly with Mumbo. It makes him ridiculously happy to hear the Watcher actually talk for once, instead of mute head shakes or pointing hands. Then he hears the scream. It's enough to send him crashing from his chair, teetering precariously on its back two legs per usual. As he's trying to scramble up from it, he hears two other things that make his blood run cold. One, the fearful shout in a language he doesn't understand, distorted and otherworldly. Two, the very human cry of Mumbo, scared and hurt. Impulse practically pulls the door off its hinges in his panic, and he barely even spares a glance for the hyperventilating Watcher, too focused on grabbing Mumbo's arm and yanking him upright, practically dragging him towards the door. Mumbo's free hand is pressed to his face, and Impulse can see bright red drops leaking out from under it. He's bleeding, and so in shock that Impulse can barely get his legs to move. Mumbo, get out! He yells, and every single nerve in his body flinches when Zelqua's head whips around to look at them from where he's still contorted on the floor. The Watcher's eyes are wide and unfocused, but Impulse can clearly see the panic in those void black pools. Void black, yes, but also flickering purple, like they're trying desperately to spark, but something is stopping them. A strangled, inhuman shriek tears out of Zelqua's throat, and he's on his feet in a movement almost too quick to follow, wings flaring wide. Close it! Get out! Impulse shouts, already scrambling back as fast as he can, dragging Mumbo behind him as he yanks the door shut. The dull impact of flesh against metal hits the other side, and the sound of nails against iron rake down Impulse's spine. Zoka screams in a language that sounds like magic and void and stars. Mumbo is shaking like a dry leaf in the wind, one spindly hand still clutching at his wound, while his eyes stare in horror at the door. Zelqua abandons the door, and Impulse and Mumbo listen in frozen, shocked silence to the footsteps that pound through the room, the trapped being desperately trying to find a way out. It's heartbreaking. It's horrible. Impulse wants nothing more than for it to stop, for the tormented creature to stop crying out in a language that he doesn't know, yet clearly translates his fear and fury. Then the cries stop, and the screaming starts, and is the most horrible thing Impulse has ever heard. They cautiously look through the window at the shaking, convulsing Watcher, kneeling at the center of the room with his hands clutched around his head. Mumbo and Impulse exchange a glance and immediately dive for the communicators. It takes a few minutes to alert Exuma, and only 5 more for the admin to cannon down the staircase, powerful and purposeful and furious. Impulse can count on one hand the amount of times he's seen him like this, and it's never because of something good. Exuma is pissed, and Impulse is suddenly afraid for the Watcher in the room. I need to know everything that's happened, Exuma snaps, moving for the table. Impulse and Mumbo exchange uncertain glances, and their moment of silence proves to be too long, because the admin rounds on them with burning eyes that they can feel on them even with the visor. Talk to me, he commands. and Mumbo flinches. It's a close thing for Impulse as well because he's never heard Exuma talk like this. Order his players like the admin he says he isn't. Impulse trusts Exuma with his life, but he's quite certain that his admin isn't himself right now, and this is out of his and Mumbo's depths. So as he explains the situation, digging out a potion for Mumbo to heal the wound, he also discreetly types out a message on his comm. Impulse SV. Need help. X isn't acting like himself. Doc M77. Already on my way. Impulse watches nervously as Exuma looks through the window for a long moment, and wonders if he sees something they don't. The admin shakes his head slightly and turns away from the door, clicking through options on his comm and starting to throw up admin panels, thick with code and numbers. Mumbo starts cleaning his wound, then almost drops the cloth when Doc comes barreling down the staircase, nearly tripping over the still overturned chair that sits by the entrance. Oh good, you made it, Doc says, mostly for Exuma's benefit than anyone else's. What are you doing? What I should have done in the first place, Exuma says, and it's the flat, emotionless acceptance in his voice that makes Impulse's blood run cold. Getting the Watcher off my server. What? What? Mumbo's cry is a mirror of Impulse's thoughts, and this time the cloth does fall as he lurches forward, and then stops as if he's unsure what he's planning to do. X, wait! I'm done waiting, Exuma spits, and there's no mistaking the rage that vibrates along every inch of his form as he turns to Mumbo, abandoning the screens. He hurt you, Mumbo. He's trying to break out of the cuffs. He's a danger, and I'm not letting him stay on my server for a second longer. He turns back to his panels, and Impulse lets Doc reason with the admin, stepping back to give them room. His head is spinning way too fast, and he needs some space to sort through his frantic thoughts. From what he can gather, Zelka is trying to break out, which should scare him. A Watcher loose on the server is what they're trying to prevent in the first place. But Zelka's scream from earlier rings in his ears again, and he tries not to shiver. That wasn't rage. It was fear, plain and simple. Fear of them? Impulse has done nothing in his power to assure has done everything in his power to assure Zelka that no harm will come to him while here. So why the fear? He reacted on instinct, Mumbo had said, and Impulse realizes now that it was more than it seemed. The image of black, unfocused eyes flashes through Impulse's mind, and oh, he gets it now. Zelka doesn't even know where he is. Something akin to a panic attack, maybe, except the person panicking is an eldritch being they're all afraid of. Perhaps memories then? The terror of something repeating that he desperately doesn't want to live through again? Which means that Zelka isn't trying to break out of Hermitcraft. He's trying to break out of a place he doesn't recognize. He didn't want to hurt Mumbo. He wanted to get away from someone he didn't know. He's not doing this on purpose, and Impulse needs to explain that to Exuma right now. Thankfully, when Impulse manages to drag his mind back to Earth, it seems that he doesn't need to. Exuma has closed the admin panels and is standing silently at the door, Mumbo hovering on one side and Doc a steady support on the other. Impulse comes up next to them and rests a hand on Exuma's shoulder. The Voidwalker startles but lets out a long breath and places his gloved hand over Impulse's. Alright, Exuma says, and it sounds like a decision and a hesitance at the same time. He lets his hand fall away and turns to face them. Alright, Doc. Thank you. I'd like for you to come sometime later once he's awake and run a diagnostic scan of his code. make sure he isn't injured from fighting the cuffs, and to see if he'll be fine after his void exposure. It's not a direct dismissal, but Doc understands the underlying sentiment and nods, gently bumping his fist against Exuma's shoulder before saying farewell, and disappearing up the stairs. Should, should, should I go too? Mumbo asks, but Exuma shakes his head, crossing over to the table and righting the chair that had toppled over. He points Mumbo to the other chair and sits down, reaching for his comm. I'm gonna check you over and make sure you're alright, he says, and the panels pop up around him again. Impulse, send out a message in the guard chat. Get 2 people over here to swap you out. You've been here all morning and someone else can take over. Go home, get some rest. With all due respect, X, I'd rather stay here, Impulse says, brows furrowing as he frowns. Exuma sighs and looks up at him, and it's not the voice of an admin that he uses his next, but the voice of a friend. You haven't been sleeping well. None of us have. Not since the situation began. I'm not going to stand by and watch you run yourself into the ground, Impulse. Please, just go home. Impulse's frown deepens, but even with the visor, he can see the look that Exuma fixes him with. Please don't argue with me right now, it says. And Impulse is starting to realize that all of this is affecting his admin a lot more than he thought. Fine, he relents, and Exuma's shoulders slump in relief. Wells and Stress are coming in a few minutes. You'll be fine until they get here? Really, Impulse, we can take care of ourselves, Exuma replies, but it's light-hearted and there's no ire behind the words. Oh, I know, Impulse says with a grin, grabbing his book and stowing it away in his inventory. Take care, Mumbo. I'll see you later. As Impulse makes his way up the stairs, strapping his Elytra onto his back, he can't help but lament the setback. He truly thought they had been making progress. But he admits to himself as he steps out of the staircase and unfolds his Elytra. Maybe sometimes things need to get worse before they can get better. Chapter 16, Pearl's Pillow View. As Exuma knocks on the door and then steps back, Pearl finds herself tapping her foot against the ground. It's not that she's actually impatient or anything. It's just become habit to reassure herself as to the ground's existence when there is ground to exist. She spent so long world jumping that it's almost strange to just be. To stand here and breathe in the fresh air and listen to the soft rasp of Exuma's respirator. Pearl's gaze flicks over to the admin, then away again before she's caught staring. She doesn't really know what to think of him yet, but he's plenty polite and patiently weathered Pearl's outburst earlier, so she supposed that he's alright. She hadn't meant to explode like that. It's just, Watchers are the reason she's spent the last several years of her life running between worlds, scraping up any bit of information she can in the hopes that they'll lead her to Grian. Learning that there's a Watcher on the very server she's on was terrifying. Can she really be faulted for the fury that overtook her? The door swings open and a ridiculously lanky man around Pearl's age pokes his head out and meets her gaze. Hello. You must be our visitor, the man says, stepping aside and letting them into the foyer of the house. My name is Mumbo. Pleased to meet you. This is Pearl. turns out she specializes in Watcher research and has agreed to help us, Exuma explains, and Pearl shakes the hand that Mumbo offers her. Hey mate, how you doing? She asks, and apparently she hasn't forgotten all of her manners, because Mumbo gives her a friendly smile and motions down the corridor. I'm alright, thank you. Zell is in the living room, shall we? Mumbo turns to lead them down the hall, and suddenly Pearl's feet are frozen on the carpet. Somewhere beyond that doorway, there's a Watcher, who according to Exuma doesn't even remember who he is. A Watcher who doesn't wish destruction on player kind. A Watcher who doesn't treat the lives of humans like a game of chess. A Watcher she's supposed to help? She's not sure if she can, but she has to. Because if she can help the Watcher, maybe the Watcher can help her. This is for Grian, she tells herself, and forces her feet to move after Mumbo. She turns the corner, takes one step into the room, and dies. Or at least that's what it feels like. Her breath is suddenly strangled in her throat. Her heart mysteriously stops beating. Her muscles tense up and fall limp at the same time. Mumbo turns back with a question on his lips, but Pearl only has eyes for her brother. And she knows it's her brother, with the unshakable certainty that only family can have. His hair is longer, he's thinner, and his wings are a deep dark purple that makes Pearl want to scream. The look in his eyes is haunted and despairing, but it's him. She'll never forget his face, his voice, his laugh. Even if she were to forget everything else, where she come from, how she lived, she knows that she will never forget him. It's like a sword to her heart when she realizes that he forgot her. It's a fire burning her skin and an anvil pressing down on her chest when she looks into his eyes and doesn't see that spark of love and mischief and excitement. We might think it's a code block, Exuma had said, and suddenly Pearl wants to rip the world to pieces. She wants to find the Watchers and set them on fire, to carve out their hearts and shred their wings, stab needles into every one of their goddamn all-seeing eyes. The Watchers took her brother, changed him, and spat him back out. They took everything that made him who he was, and locked it away in obsidian. She wanted them to hurt. She wants them to pay for what they did. And yet, despite all that, his void black eyes meet Pearl's, and she could swear that recognition blazes through them like wildfire. I know you, he whispers, and oh, Pearl's pretty sure she's about to cry, because even though the Watchers kidnapped him, transformed him, wiped his memories, he still remembers her, though he might not know how. That's enough. That is everything she'll ever need. He recognizes her, and she will thank the gods for 1,000 years for that small mercy. Her other foot comes to rest on the carpet. Her throat is so dry it takes a few swallows to get it to work. She's still terrified. He has the same eyes, the same face, the same stature and stance, but he's different. He's changed, no matter how desperately she wishes he hasn't. She's not sure what to do now, but she has to know. So with the smallest breaths that finally seem to be returning to her lungs, Pearl whispers his name and prays that he'll know it. Grian? And that is the end of Chapter 19's